You ever find when you're dealing with somebody that says, oh yeah, well, we're okay with replacing the floors and, minor renovations.
Yeah.
And then you go and show them some of those homes and they're like, but it's too much work for us. And really, they all the time.
Yeah.
Welcome to episode 338 of the Real Estate Podcast. Adrian and I today are answering ChatGPT's top real estate myths. Let's go.
Welcome to the Real Estate Podcast, your go-to source for raw, unfiltered stories and expert tips. Whether you're a buyer, seller, tenant, landlord, or realtor, join us as we dive into the world of real estate.
I'm just gonna, I don't know if people will hear it properly, but. So Adrian was asking me.
Was this like a Zen podcast?
So I have this app, it's called Endel, and no, they don't sponsor us in any way. I'm just giving it a shout out because I use it daily, Endel. And it has a whole bunch of different sounds that are designed to do different things based on the frequencies, the noise that it produces, etc. So they have ones for napping, which works amazingly well. I know you're not a napper.
No.
A half an hour nap can make the difference in a day, especially for a realtor. I've always thought that, and I've had that routine for many, many years that if I know I'm up early, like today, like starting my day at 4 o'clock in the morning, and if I know I'm going to be up until 11 o'clock at night watching the Leaf game, I might need a little 20-minute, half an hour refresh to, clear my mind and be sane.
And you think a 30-minute nap will do that?
Oh, 100% it does.
All right. I believe you. If it works for you, I can't argue it. I don't think it would work for me.
Wow. How do you know if you never tried?
Yeah, I guess.
Anyway, so this app, I wake up to it every morning as an example.
Like it's your alarm clock?
No, I don't really use an alarm clock. Whenever my body's ready to get up and go, I get up and go. And usually it's pretty early, like very seldomly I'll sleep in unless I'm like hungover or something, which doesn't happen very often at all. So I usually just wake up. Whenever I wake up, I turn it on. And we were talking about drinking enough water. That's my routine. I wake up with it's actually called Wake Up in the app for 5 minutes. I drink 2 glasses of water while my coffee brews and read some news with the coffee on Apple News. Do some stretches. That's how I start the day.
Very nice.
Anyhow.
It's good to have a routine. So what are we talking about today?
Well, today, Robbie, because I said to Robbie, what are we talking about today in the podcast? Because Adrian and I don't have a topic. And he said, actually.
He had already thought about this.
Oh, yeah, he had it ready to go.
Oh, he's maybe got a list of backups.
Top real estate myths.
By ChatGPT.
By ChatGPT, not by Robbie Nepomuceno.
Right. I mean, we can give him some credit, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He contributed to things here.
He must have given it some prompts in order to come up with it. So, yes, he does get a little bit of credit.
We should have a little picture-in-picture with Robbie in the bottom corner so we can communicate with him.
I said to Robbie, is there a way that you can ask us the questions through the speaker in the room?
Oh.
And he goes, no, the Rodecaster Pro that we have, it doesn't communicate as a PA system. But him and Ian apparently have been looking into it. They're always finding ways for us to spend money.
Well, that would be fun to have like picture-in-picture with Robbie could pop up, Ian could pop up on screen here.
Yeah. Except Robbie on camera, he's a little gun shy when it comes to that stuff.
That's because he hasn't done it enough. That's all.
He'll debate you on that, I'm sure.
Okay. All right. So what are we doing?
And by the way, then these questions were filtered by Steve Bruman.
Okay.
So Robbie had that full list, and there was a lot of...
These are questions?
I don't know. I have no idea.
They're myths.
I don't know. Robbie, show us the first one. What is it? Real estate myth number 1. You need 20% down to buy a home.
It's actually funny. I had the conversation with someone recently.
Oh, good. Then you can answer it.
I'm trying to remember who it was. It was with regards to buying new construction, and they thought that with new construction, you had to put 20% down. And I explained the difference between the deposit and the down payment. So, I mean, to answer the question, no, you don't need 20% down under most circumstances. There are exceptions, like if it's an investment property, the lender may have requirements. But if you're buying a primary residence, that's not required, as long as you qualify for the mortgage at a lower down payment.
You can actually still buy with 0% down.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
But I mean, certain lenders, a lot of lenders have different programs. But generally speaking, 5% is common. And just to kind of go back to not to get confused between down payment and deposit, especially when it's new construction, builders will almost always have a larger down payment requirement. Sometimes
deposit.
Now I'm confusing myself. A deposit requirement where you have a structured period of time and a set amount of money to be provided to them as I don't know the right terminology, but like your deposit would be broken down over tiered deposit, we'll call it. And, that could be up to 10% or 20%. But when you close, you can take some of the money back if you qualify. So the bank may provide 95% of the purchase price, right, and you would get... So
if you're buying $1 million home and the deposit structure had you providing $150,000 in deposits over the course of a year, but you're only putting 5% down, then you'll get 10% of that, or the 10% of that 15% back.
Yes. And in some cases, it's advantageous not to save up the 20%. There are a lot of people who are saving and saving and saving. They want to hit the 20% down.
Because they don't want the mortgage insurance.
They don't want the mortgage insurance, but the amount of time it takes them to accumulate that amount of money, the housing market in many instances has appreciated significantly, and far more, the purchase price has increased far more than the extra money they've saved.
Yeah, and if you're renting, you're then still spending money on rent while you're doing it.
Right.
And what a lot of people don't know is an insured mortgage often gives you better negotiating power with the lenders, and you can often negotiate a lower interest rate because the mortgage is actually insured.
That's right.
That's right.
There you go. Next. Spring is the best time to sell.
Ooh. A lot of people say, I'm going to wait till the spring to sell, or I'm selling in the spring. Mm-hmm. It's the spring market.
First of all, let's quantify spring market. When people hear spring market, I think they think more activity. Prices are maybe higher, multiple offers, bidding, whatever.
So the better question is, when does the spring market start?
Well, and that no one has a crystal ball. 8 years ago, 5 years ago, even maybe not 5, it was far more predictable. Now, for many years, the market has been extremely unpredictable.
Certainly since COVID.
100%. And, so the spring markets, air quotes.
2022 was the peak market.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote unquote spring market started at the end of January.
And historically, that's always been... for me, a favorable time to list is earlier, like before the spring market.
Yeah.
I did air quoted the wrong word there. But before the spring market, because you oftentimes, when the snow's still on the ground, you start to get a lot of the buyers, but you don't have the inventory. So for sellers,
supply and demand.
For sellers in those scenarios, it works out better. But again, we have no idea. And the last few years have shown that you can't guess.
This is such an open-ended question, too, because it all depends on what you're doing if you do sell. So have you already bought a home?
Right.
if you sell, are you then going to be buying a home? Are you buying first? Are you sell? So there's so many variables that can steer that answer that, so as an example, if you're upgrading, do you want to do it at a time when supply is really low?
Right.
And then you're going to be paying a premium for whatever you're buying. So all kinds of factors to weigh out.
Well, and the other part is this question's usually asked in November, December.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, and I think the question there is market related, but also, you know, is now a good time to sell is the proper question. More so is spring a better time to sell? And the answer there is, again, there's a lot of variables, but in those months, you often have less inventory. The people out shopping are usually more serious buyers. And we've had huge success right up. And I remember there's deals we put together Christmas Eve. But again, there's a lot of factors. If your property is really unique and has hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in exterior landscaping, there may be reason to believe that warmer climates would be conducive to a more successful sale as well.
If you're buying and selling in the same market, which we recommend, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
It really doesn't matter if it's spring, fall, summer. Mm-hmm. Do it when you found the house that you want to move into, mm-hmm. or do it whenever is suiting your lifestyle, your budget, your desires. A lot of people don't want to move when there's still snow on the ground.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, that's another factor.
You know, a lot of people don't want to move during the school year.
Mm-hmm.
So if you sell in the spring, you're moving during the school year most likely.
Yeah.
So.
Next myth, please, Robbie. Actually, how many myths are there?
We don't know.
Oh, he went back quick. Before I even finished saying actually, he went back. Like, he's very good.
You don't need a home inspection on a new build. Ooh.
So I didn't do a home inspection.
I did.
And you did. So this is great. And I would say
14 years ago.
14 years ago, yeah. And I had a conversation with someone recently who also did, and they were very happy they did. So maybe you can give your story.
Well, there's not much to the story.
It's great. But, really like short answers.
Yeah. I've helped clients purchase new builds and have recommended them to get a home inspection. Some of my clients that I didn't help buy a new home, they just went to the builder direct. Back years ago, the builders weren't really cooperating with brokerages and real estate salespeople.
Yeah.
They had their own people. So I know a bunch of people that have had it done. And I don't think any of them ever came back to me and said, well, that was a waste of money.
I almost feel like I would have...
you, for the average home, it's going to cost you about $500, $600, $700.
And that's easy to find in any repair.
And so in my home, there were a few things identified. And at that time, we had just finished our real estate courses and about to get licensed. Mm-hmm. Because that was 14 years ago. Wow. It's crazy to think how much has happened since then. Mm-hmm. So the one thing I definitely wouldn't have caught, and now the technology is more readily available to the average consumer, but this home inspector had the infrared and went around the home and identified 2 specific areas where there was insulation completely missing.
Mm-hmm. I would have found the same thing, which I've subsequently found and had to repair on my own.
Right. And then minor things, I can't recall now what they were, but things that at that time, me personally as an average consumer wouldn't have been able to identify or wouldn't have thought anything of it. But this gentleman came up with a laundry list of things. Mm-hmm. I submitted that as a part of the 30-day carry-on warranty. Most new home builders are pretty good right now that if you submit stuff during that period of time, those are things that will get addressed. And Madame did come back and address it. So
I have a friend, similar story, different industry, but he recently was approaching the end of his comprehensive warranty on his car. He has a Tesla, and he took it to somebody who used to work for Tesla, but they started their own shop and had an inspection done. And he did the inspection, and same idea, came up with a long list of things to submit to Tesla to try to get them to repair under warranty. And this friend did not have expectations that Tesla would do it, because they weren't like active problems, but they were, conducive to maybe being problematic at some point. And they did everything, and it was like several $1,000s in repairs, like new suspension, like pretty substantial. And they did everything, and they asked him, "Did you get an inspection done?" And he said he did. And I guess that's very common. And I never would have thought that, but even in the automotive industry, people are doing it.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm approaching my 3 years. Maybe I should.
Well, if you're getting another vehicle, then
I think I'd be happy with it for a while.
you can just get a new version of what you're driving for the same payment.
Maybe, or less.
Next, you'll save money without a realtor.
So, I mean, there's lots of instances I can...
That's a very long answer.
It is. I have my dad. I remember going back a few years. My dad did a private deal before I was in the industry. He bought his neighbor's house and bought it privately, and the price that they agreed to was substantially lower than market value.
So your dad saved, but the seller lost.
Correct. And I think that's the thing in real estate is a lot of people. A lot of parties to transactions, they don't know any better. So they think they did well, but in reality, they have no idea.
No, here's reality. Is in those scenarios, who is saving?
Right.
Who's saving? Because both parties theoretically want to be coming out ahead of this.
Well, right.
If they're both foregoing representation from a professional,
who's saving?
Who's coming out ahead?
Right. Nobody. Other than they just don't know what they're doing.
And if you're selling,
the liability is much higher.
If you're selling, and it depends on the market, a professional realtor, a professional real estate team, certainly, the marketing, the exposure, the database, the staging, the advertising, the experience.
Well, how many times have we had clients where...
all provide value.
Oh, 100%. And even the negotiations is a big component that a lot of people don't think about. They look at the marketing component of it, but they don't think of what happens behind the scenes to put a deal together.
Now, if you're buying a home and you want to do the legwork yourself, I think you can save money by omitting the realtor. You want to be the one going door knocking, doing your own, like your dad did, right?
Yeah. Finding like off-market deals.
Sure, you might be able to save a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
There are tons of flippers.
That's all they do is they send out letters.
Is they prospect for people that don't want to deal with realtors, don't want to go through the process of decluttering and staging and going on the market. So these guys come with cash. Oh, your home might be worth $550, but these guys offer you $400 or $425 cash on the spot, and you might think that's a good number, and there you go. So when selling, though, I can't think of too many instances these days where it benefits anybody.
Well, if you look at any industry and you look at salespeople, the spectrum of their degree of success is broad.
Yeah.
It's huge, right? Yeah. So there's something to be said about people
that's a huge component
about people that know what they're doing.
Depends on the realtor.
Yes. That's a whole nother story. So,
right.
Many of you maybe would have done better without a realtor.
Well, I mean,
based on who you hire.
Yeah. Are you getting the O.J. Simpson legal team? because
Right.
you might fare off a little better.
Yeah.
Okay, next. Can you see it?
The lights, I had to move to see it. Buy the worst house on the best street. I agree with this. I'm a big fan of
I like it. Yeah.
of buying anything with a bigger upside. And that's a great.
Now, that's a good way to save money. You want to talk about saving money?
Yeah. We have talked about that before.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of tenanted properties that are dirty, stinky, and messy, and nobody wants to
the house
look at them.
Even the townhouse that we flipped, it probably was the worst house on a awesome street.
Yeah, it was very basic at the time. It was cluttered. There was cats running around the house.
Smelled like cat
I think
piss.
the homeowners were there every time I went there.
Yeah.
It wasn't very appealing.
Yeah.
So it was no surprise it wasn't being sold.
Yep.
And then we bought it and rented it out for a couple of years and cleaned it up and sold it. And it turned out to be a great
more
investment.
than cleaning it up.
Well, clean it up, yeah. We did. But yes, great philosophy to buy based on.
Yeah, but you have to be prepared to either put in some of that sweat equity or the financial capital that you'll need to do the improvements.
I'm actually blown away even till this day, and even with repeat clients, how many people can't get their head wrapped around this. Like they become very obsessed with what they see, and they have very strict requirements about what they want, and they don't think long term. They don't think about how you can make it whatever you want and better, and you'll come out faring.
You ever
much
find
better.
when you're dealing with somebody that says, "Oh yeah, well we're okay with replacing the floors and minor." Renovations,
really.
And then you go and show them some of those homes, and they're like, but it's too much work for us. And really, they all the time.
Yeah. And some of them can be convinced, but many cannot.
And we use that as listing realtors as, part of our intel, because we know exactly what turns buyers on.
Yeah.
So when we're presenting the homes that we list for sale, we want you to walk in and be like, wow, I don't have to do anything here, because ultimately everybody loves a move-in ready house, except for the flippers.
Yeah, well, and that's where staging comes in too, because it becomes such a focal point that people often don't even observe the deficiencies.
Right.
So,
yeah, well, that's like walking into certain showrooms.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, we like that. Next. Real estate always goes up.
People have thought that for many, many years. And in the long run, it probably will. As with
it depends on the timeline.
Depends on the timeline. There's always going to be blips. I mean, in
2075, real estate will be worth a lot more than it is today. I can assure you of that.
But along the way, there will be micro markets that fluctuate and scare the bejeebas out of people and cause people to go bankrupt and cause people to become millionaires, and it's going to be all over. You just got to sit tight.
We don't see it as much in our country, but in the United States, there are many areas within the country that were at one time booming or a good place to invest in real estate, and now they are ghost towns.
Yeah, we don't see that much.
And one larger city that comes to mind is Detroit.
I was going to say that, yeah. Well, that was largely driven by
and now
industry.
Detroit again is
coming back.
It's widely popular for a whole new reason. It's not now the car manufacturing mecca or whatever, but the arts industry and it's taken on a whole new genre. But there's a whole bunch of places in many states where they are deserted areas where at one time they were very prosperous areas. And then, the flip side of it, when we first moved to Las Vegas, it was all desert and nobody wanted to buy a home there. And now with, I don't know how many millions of people live there now, and real estate is really progressing.
Yeah.
And the upward trajectory will say, yeah, it's a good place to invest. So in Canada, it's a little bit easier to pinpoint what areas might be better to invest in. So we always look at what's close to the highways, what's close to the goal lines, how close are you to Toronto as an example, and stay on the beaten path.
Right.
Because that's where the demand will always be. If you go into the more rural areas, and Ontario as an example is a huge province. If you're right in the middle of, as Canadians say, butt fuck nowhere, is the demand a little bit less? Is it harder to sell? Sure. So,
but I think
you're more susceptible.
One of the keys with this myth would be that over a shorter period of time, it's not always true.
Right. If you bought in 2022,
well, that's what I'm saying is
your investment is down.
People shouldn't go into buying real estate blindly, just like you wouldn't go into buying a stock or another investment blindly. You need to be.
I don't know. A lot of people buy stocks blindly.
Well, they do, and there's people buying real estate
recommendations based on an article they read.
Well, and there's people buying real estate blindly, and now they're going bankrupt because they're having to sell their house for hundreds of thousands of dollars less than they paid.
Yeah,
and it's detrimental. And they may never come back from it.
Yep.
So you need to be smart with when you're buying real estate.
Yep.
Especially if you're buying new construction that's not closing for a long time, because we don't know what the market will be then. And you need to consider all outcomes and make sure you're prepared.
Yep. All right, let's bang through these. Next, the Zestimate or online estimates is accurate. So this goes to Zillow.
Zillow
has their Zestimate, which there are a few other apps and websites that do a similar thing. And there's even reports that realtors can buy through the land registry that essentially does the same thing from the same data.
Yeah.
And it's just taking sold data and using algorithms that take the land size, the square footage, the bedrooms, bathrooms, and location, and then averaging it out and spitting out a some kind of a range.
I'd say it's a good number to use if you want to keep an eye over a period of time as a general understanding for which direction the market's heading, perhaps. But if you're in a situation where you're actually considering buying or selling, you don't rely on those things. You get a proper valuation done.
Yeah, and those things don't take into consideration the condition of the property, any renovations, any upgrades, updates. Right. Doesn't take into consideration if the neighboring property looks like a junkyard, things of that nature. It's a good guideline, a good, they're saying it's an estimate. That's what an estimate is.
But if you look right now at all the sold properties in a given area, you're going to have very similar styles of home in many cases, especially newer developments. And you could probably take half a dozen of the exact same model home, and the spread would be substantial. And there's a lot of reason when you dig in and look at it very closely, there's often a lot of obvious reasons as to why that's the case, such as location and quality of finishes, color choices. Like someone who chose an uncommon color for their kitchen because they liked it will have a profound impact on value. So there's a lot of little intricacies that these programs don't account for.
Robbie, you did a good job today with these questions because Adrian hasn't been this chatty on a podcast in a really long time. Next question. Always do renovations before you sell?
No, not always the case.
Yeah, I would say no too. Depends on what your return
I remember there was one house, someone told me this, it wasn't a transaction I was involved in, but they had sold a house and they replaced their kitchen in order to sell. And after the house closed, they drove by shortly after and saw the kitchen on the front lawn.
Yeah.
So the buyer had intentions of gutting it, right?
Yeah.
So you need to know your market and know the likely buyer. Like generally you can have a fairly good understanding of who your demographic is, and you know where your money is well spent.
Yeah. Updates though, like painting a home and changing light fixtures and
Caulking,
potentially
painting.
door handles
Yeah.
and maintenance things. That's usually a very good investment and something you should do before selling. But a renovation, yeah, that's very open-ended. Okay, next. The first offer is always the best. Ooh.
That's a good one. We talked about, I gave an example recently.
That used to be a saying in the real estate industry.
Yeah. I mean, certainly in the beginning of the listing period, let's say somebody comes in after day one and gives you an offer of, close to or full asking price. Like I would say that buyer feels like they have the least amount of negotiating power versus a buyer who comes in a month later.
Yeah.
So that's, from that perspective, it could be true.
Yeah, the market has shifted though, right? Like if you asked this question 3 years ago, you might be getting a different answer than you do today. But today, I think buyers are willing to try a number even on day one or two.
Oh, they are 100%.
So
I wouldn't put a lot
right
of...
now, I would say no.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't put a lot of weight on
But it depends
the
what the
question
offer
period.
is.
There's so many
Yeah.
variables.
Depends what the offer is. Depends how you've positioned the price and the strategy of that listing.
Yeah.
Right? If you're priced high and you're priced high and somebody comes in and gives you that price, that could be your
There
best
have
offer.
been many sellers who have lived by this saying, declined the first offer
and regretted it.
and regretted it and
Yeah.
sold for significantly less months later.
Yep.
So
Next.
renting is throwing money away. Well, I guess it depends on what you're doing with your excess money. That's the key. There's a lot of very wealthy people who suggest renting your primary residence and investing in other assets, even outside of real estate.
If you sold your home in 2022 and you rented, you would be well ahead today.
Very much so. So,
But at the same time, over the long run, you are not paying down that mortgage and building equity. So
I don't even agree with that necessarily.
yeah,
Because
you can debate this all day long because a homeowner. So if you have a mortgage and you own a home, you're paying property taxes, you're paying for the roof leak, you're paying for the new windows, you're paying for the air conditioner, you're paying for the guy to come and replace the driveway, whatever.
Well, there's someone on our street. I don't know what he's paying in rent, but I know that it was very low.
I was talking with this about this with somebody else on our street.
He's been there since new.
He's been
as
there
long as
for
us.
14 years. That guy
He's
is
probably spending less than $3,000 a month.
yeah. Oh, much less.
And the carrying cost on that, if you were to buy it today, is probably $6,000 a month.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Like,
the rent on it, if you were to rent it today, is probably $4,000 easily.
easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's.
I don't think he listens or watches the podcast. So
Well, we're not saying. I mean, we don't have tons of houses on the street.
he knows who he
there
is
are a
if
lot
he's
of
listening
rentals,
to
but
this.
no, I mean, I commend him. Like he's doing very well.
Only 4 people on the street have been there for the whole time.
Well, nobody knows where we live.
Are you kidding me?
Buyers will see past the clutter. I mean, that's just a no-brainer that's not the case.
Definitely not the case.
And you have to clean your fucking house.
Yeah, unless you want to sell to a flipper.
Yeah, but then you're losing out. That's what we're saying.
Exactly.
Those are the deals
Right.
out there that people,
Yeah.
buyers are searching for.
If you don't want the highest return on your home, then keep your clutter.
Yeah, keep your clutter. Next, we're done.
We're done.
Those are good questions, Robbie.
They were.
And ChatGPT and Steve. Thank you.
For those listening or watching, send us a message, leave a comment, let us know what you think, or if any of our
And
answers,
Subscribe.
subscribe. Yeah.
A lot of people watching that.
Yeah,
don't
we got to get
subscribe,
to
and
1,000 subscribers on
we
YouTube.
want to hit 1,000 subscribers.
Can you guys give us a hand and Because a lot of people are, I watch those stats.
Yeah.
A lot of people are watching that aren't subscribed.
Yeah. Show some love. Thank you.
See you next time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching episode 338 of the Real Estate Podcast. Let us know what you think of our answers to the top real estate myths. We'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And show us some love by subscribing. We'd really appreciate it. See you next time.